after the engineer and developer and staff have spoken, because some of the questions might be answered.
25 feet. Will this be 25 or this was going to be?
We've got 3 minutes yet,
Yeah,
so.
we'll give it 3
Yeah.
minutes.
We'll have to have 25, but that's what it would have to be. You need 25 car.
Well, but the cars won't go there. The cars are going to go in here. This is the street.
Plus block.
This is going to face the street.
We got 25 yards in the back, 25 feet.
I guess I'm confused as to where the setback, where they're going to reduce the setback or what the plan is. They want to do.
Yard setback of 16.5 and 25 corners. That's the street.
Didn't quite understand all of this.
This is Judy's first meeting.
Yes.
And I thought there's something with numbers, and now I don't see them. Oh, yeah, here it is. Okay, sorry. So they just want 15.5 feet. And then from the north property line, 13.5. So this right now, there's,
Welcome. We called the order of the P and Z meeting. We'll take roll call for attendance.
Myrna Wagner. Here. Dean Field.
Here.
Judy Winkle.
here.
Mark Klein Wiltering.
Yes.
Tim Potabom.
Yes.
Bailey Francis. Here. Fred Grine.
Yes.
Dennis Vandenhall. Chris Knuckles.
Yes.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, Article 2, is approved minutes from March 30, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve?
I so move. Second.
Roll call.
Field.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes.
Winkle.
Yes.
Klein Wiltering.
Yes.
Potabom.
Yes.
Francis. Yes. Grine.
Yes.
Knuckles.
Yes.
Article 3, consideration of subdivision renovation redevelopment from a former Bethel Church site. Cap. Sam, take her away. What do you got?
Thank you, Mark. So we have a subdivision that's being considered for redevelopment of the former Bethel Church site. We have 3 individuals with us that I'd like to take a moment to introduce. We have Brad Beck with Beck Engineering. Brad, raise your hand. And we have Casey Shelton, who's the lead developer for CAP LLC. Casey? Can you hear me?
I'm here, thank you.
All right, and Casey's by phone. And then we have Steve Halgren from Planning Solutions, and we may need to ask Steve some questions on the reports. He helped write the reviews on this. So I guess we'll start with Brad Beck on the presentation. And then after Brad and Casey have spoken and the commissioners have had a chance to ask a few questions, then we'll take public comment since some of the questions may be answered in the course of the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you for having me tonight. As Sam mentioned, Brad Beck with Beck Engineering. We're celebrating our 2nd day in business in Sheldon, so an exciting week for us. I'm excited to be here representing Casey and his group with CAP Builders. As Sam mentioned, this is a planned redevelopment of the Bethel Church site. So Bethel Crossing Townhomes is the name of the plat you have in front of you tonight. And it's bounded on the west by 6th Avenue, on the east by 7th Avenue, and on the south by 7th Street. The plan for this development is a type of development that Casey has had some success with in other parts of the state, namely in the Des Moines type area. On the southerly portion will be 2 different 4plexes, and on the northerly portion of the property will be a 6plex for a total of 14 units. Access to those will be through a center private street that will go from 7th Avenue to 6th Avenue. there will be 6 units on the north and then the 8 units on the south. As far as utilities, we have, luckily we have water and sanitary sewer close. So the sanitary sewer drains to the east towards 7th Avenue, and then the water, we're able to loop our system on the south on 7th Street and the east on 7th Avenue. We worked with Todd and actually have a full set of plans and specs prepared and have been reviewed by city staff and approved. As far as drainage, everything generally flows to the southeast, and we're going to keep that natural drainage pattern as it is with a storm sewer system that will connect to an intake on the northwest side of the intersection of 7th Street and 7th Avenue. Those are the main points of the question of the presentation tonight. We have both a preliminary and a final plat before you, and as part of this, subdivision is basically a 0 lot line subdivision. So what that means is typically if you have separate units, you'll have side yard setbacks and those sorts of things. If you have combined units, such as the 2 4-plexes and the 6-plexes, if you're going to sell the land with each unit, you need to have a 0 lot line subdivision. So the variances requested are listed, but basically the lot widths are narrower than a traditional subdivision, and some of the areas are smaller to accommodate those 0 lot lines with the 0 side yard setbacks. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
So the idea behind this, Brad, is to have owner-occupied housing.
Yeah, so there's 2 ways this could be accomplished. One is through owner-occupied housing, through traditional subdivision, which is the more normal way to transfer property. The other way would be to set up a horizontal property regime instead of a condominium association. There's drawbacks to that. With the association in the shared area, you only own the unit, you don't actually own the land underneath it, and that can create some problems with financing on the secondary market in particular. So this is kind of the more traditional way to do things, and can be more appealing both for buyers and for lenders.
And I think another question that will be asked is, what is the width of the street that's running through, and will it be, and how does that compare to a normal width, and will it be private or public?
Yeah, so it'll be a private street, and the width will be a bit narrower. Typically, the minimum width for a public street is around 31 feet, and then there's typically a 50-foot right-of-way that goes along with this. On subdivisions like this, where it's a private street, the widths are typically narrower and the parking is off-street. So there's a 26-foot wide concrete street that runs from east to west between 6th Avenue and 7th Avenue. And then there's a 2-stall garage for each unit for 2 parking spaces, and then there's also ample width and depth in front of each unit for 2 more spaces, for a total of 4 spaces of parking per unit. And then in addition, there will be some angled parking constructed on the north side of 7th Street that will be on city right-of-way, but so will be available for the public, but are primarily being constructed as a result of these units. So ample parking.
Go ahead. Okay, thank you. I'm new here, so
Okay.
I really do have a lot of questions.
Sure.
Well, welcome, by the way, Judy, so.
I should pull down your microphone so
Okay, sure.
Casey can hear it.
Okay. First of all, you said these would be owner occupied, so they're going to own they're going to own the land underneath their unit.
Correct.
Okay. So who owns that street in the back, in between?
In the middle, so there's an easement for access, so everybody is able to access that, and then there will be some sort of association formed to be able to maintain that street.
Okay. And I actually woke up this morning thinking, where are you going to put all the snow?
Yeah, so snow, basically the 2 easiest spots to put them is on the northwest and the northeast side, where on the south we have the 2 4-plexes, and then on the north we just have the 1 6-plex. So there are storm sewer intakes to the west and to the east of those north units, and some grass areas and a depressed area right there. So that would be the easy place to put the snow. If we get a lot of snow in a year, they may have to haul some away.
Okay. Okay, so the variance that you're requesting, the street on 7th Street, that would not be 25 feet? It would be
15 and a half.
15 and a half, okay?
Yeah.
And then the back, the north side, that's where you would go down from 25 to 13.5, right?
Yeah.
But the sides would still be 28 feet, is that correct?
Correct, and typically when you have a front yard setback, that would be for a traditional subdivision where you have parking off of the public street.
Yeah,
So 25 feet gives you ample room to park a car and stay off the city right-of-way with that car. In this case, everything's flipped, so we have access coming from the center on that private street. So although we're abutting a street and it's called front yard setback, it's actually the rear yard and the side yard of the units, if that makes sense, since the
Right,
front of
right.
the units
So-
faces the center.
so let's say in the front there, where you're going from 25 feet down to 15.5 feet. I can't really tell from the view of the plat. Are there patios there, or what is there?
Yeah, so there's some small patios as well as access out the back, and then there's sidewalks that will allow foot traffic to get around the...
So do those patios have fences around them or anything?
Yeah,
Can people put a fence there, so?
Casey had submitted some pictures, and I'm not sure if those are available, Todd?
So how close is the patio up to the sidewalk?
I can speak to the patio or the decks. Basically, what we do is we put a rail just on one side where the egress window is. That's where we put the rail. We leave the front of the deck open, so while people are sitting in their chairs, they can sit out and see out without anything obstructing their view.
Okay.
So is the deck or the patio about right up to the public sidewalk then?
Well, there won't be a public sidewalk because we have our own private sidewalk around the development, and then on the south units, there would be a public sidewalk along that as well.
So this area that's hatched here, that will be a private sidewalk.
Todd, why don't you give him the microphone?
All right, so on the north end, for example, you can see the front door and then the patios are these rectangles right here. And then the gray hatched area will be a private sidewalk that will connect to another private sidewalk that abuts the private street. And on the south units, we have the front door and the patios on the south end with a sidewalk that goes out to the public street and sidewalk.
Okay, so is the 15.5 feet from the back, from the door then, the patio door, is it from that door to the sidewalk, or how far, where does that go?
Yeah, so the variance actually goes to the edge of the public right-of-way. So it doesn't necessarily match up with a sidewalk or a street. It goes to where the private ownership ends and the public street right-of-way begins. So that's where your
Basically,
setback's
those
measured
15
from.
feet is from their back door, front door, whatever you call it, to the street.
To the edge of the street right-of-way, which is the street property. So it's actually further from the street by about another 15 or 20 feet.
So you basically got 30 feet from the unit to the street.
That's correct.
Okay.
Go ahead.
If you can come up.
Yeah, come to the mic, please, though.
So on this, I'll go real quick. No, go ahead. So on the south end, where the two fourplexes are, if you go from the actual back of curb of the street to the front of the units, it's more like 45 feet.
So, just a point of clarification, the property line that the...
Could you introduce yourself?
Sorry, Steve Hallgren with Planning Solutions, consulting with the city of Sheldon. The property line that the variance is measured from is the inside edge of the sidewalk. That's where the property line is. It's not measured from the street or the curb.
Okay,
So if you think where a sidewalk is, that inside edge,
yeah.
that's where Brad's talking about the measurements.
And that's the 30 or 45 feet that you're talking about.
The 45 feet would be...
Microphone, please.
The 45 feet would be from the back of the curb to the south edge of the south units. And what Steve's describing is you have a certain amount of property that the city owns.
Yes?
And within that property are a lot of things, utilities, streets, sidewalks, grass, all those kind of things.
Okay.
So the variance is measured from the outside point of the city right-of-way, where the city's property ends, and inside of that right-of-way is the street. So the variance is 15.5 feet from the edge of the unit to the city right-of-way, and then there's another about 30 feet or so to the street.
Okay.
if that makes sense. So the street is built inside of the property, kind of like when you own a house, your house is here, but your property line's further out, same thing.
Okay,
The variance is measured from the property line, not from the edge of the street. So,
okay,
so the units won't be as close to the actual street as what you're thinking.
okay.
It'll be from the street right away, which is wider, if that,
So it's not like the patio's gonna be right on the sidewalk or
that's correct. Yep, and yep, that's correct.
If people wanted to build a bigger patio, since they now own this land, could they do that?
That would need to be run through the building permit process and
Okay.
likely another variance, I assume.
Okay,
So
I
that-
I can answer that question. That would be a no, because you're part of a homeowners association. And so we have to have uniformity of all the units, so nobody can come in and just start building their own stuff. It's all part of the covenant of the HOA that you cannot do that.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Casey.
Hey, sorry, this is Chris Knuckles on the phone. Can I interject a question about that?
Go ahead, Chris.
Just about that HOA comment. If the HOA voted to change their covenant and everyone wanted to build bigger decks, then the HOA could change it, right? Then we would just be in the city process.
It was hard for me to understand that question, but I believe what you were asking is that if the HOA can change any of their covenants, that is correct. But in order to have a change, you have to have the quorum has to be met. So it has to have at least probably 70% of a vote as a yes before you can change any covenants of the HOA.
And to-
Thank you.
To interject one more time on your question, if we measure the distance on the south end from the street right-of-way, which is the property line,
Mm-hmm.
the red line, and the street, that's about 20 feet in this instance. So whatever is asked for a variance, there'll be about another 20 feet on the south end to the actual street.
So it'll have an appearance of like 40 feet.
Yeah, and I scaled to the actual patio to be more like 35, and to the actual house, it'll be over 40.
Okay. So it'll look a lot deeper than what it actually is.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, in just a moment.
In a moment, we will, yep.
Absolutely.
Any other questions of Brad? Thank you.
So, thank you, guys. I'll take a seat and then I'll...
Casey, do you have anything to add before we go to public comment?
No, sir.
Okay.
I'll take a seat if that's okay, and then I'll come back up if you have more questions after the comments.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
So now we'll take some public comments if there is any or questions. If you have some, come to the microphone, please. State your name also, please.
Craig Hartog, 618 7th Avenue. I'm on the north end of the lots there. One of the statements, I don't think this spot,
Todd, you want to give him the microphone?
this spot right here in the lower corner, Bethel Church had widened that sidewalk. So that sidewalk, actually, that point is about 24 inches into the sidewalk. So when you say that these are a certain distance from where the sidewalk is actually here. I mean, the sidewalk is all the way up here. It's not at this point. And that's made by a mark that they have planted.
Can you hold the microphone?
That's
closer?
made by a mark that they have planted into the sidewalk. So this is a little bit incorrect. The measurement here to that line may be correct, but the sidewalk actually comes closer to the building than that. Now, whether they plan on tearing that out, putting in a new sidewalk, it only goes up to approximately here, and then it narrows out. So I don't know if that's a great concern, but you are talking about 2 feet of space that you think you have and you don't really have.
Do we know if that area has been surveyed?
To answer your question, yes, the area has been surveyed. So everything you see as far as sidewalk, for example, up here, that kind of has the speckles on it, that hatching represents an existing sidewalk that will remain as is, which is the same sidewalk you see up here. And then as these sidewalks go south and the hatching becomes gray, then that is all proposed to be new. So those sidewalks will be replaced. So your statement is correct. The sidewalk is inside onto private property slightly. Everything that you see that's hatched will be in a similar location, but it will be a new sidewalk. And the distances we were talking about were from the back of the curb or the edge of the street up to the patio and up to the home, as opposed to the back of the sidewalk. So the back of the sidewalk will be close to the property line. And brought into ADA compliance, which it currently is not. Yep.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions from the public?
705 7th Street, which is just to the east of this project. And question, with the additional building and everything, does the structure of the sewers and water lines that are existing, is that capable of handling all the other additional stuff that will be coming?
Todd, can you answer that?
I mean, that's pretty old stuff, I believe, isn't it? Correct.
Yeah, the answer is yes. The infrastructure is older, but I did share with some of Beck Engineering's team what was their size and actually give them a larger view of the sewer area to show what dumped in, and they ran the calcs on it. And yes, it's suitable for this type of development.
Okay. Would that handle even if Bethel builds a new church there next to it?
Churches are busy for a very short
Yeah.
period of time, and their bathrooms aren't really the most popular spot, so yes.
Dave, you had another question?
Yes, I do. The street that's going through, I read all the variances that are going to have to take place. Do we have a lot of variances to that size in this town now? I'm not aware of any, but I wouldn't be aware of any. So is that common, or is it rare that we get that large of variances?
So if I might.
Go ahead.
So the variances are being considered tomorrow at the Board of
yes.
Adjustment, and
Yes.
I'd have to pull up what those are. I don't believe that one of the variances was for the width of the street, correct, Terry? Brad, right, yeah, so.
What I'm saying is, without the street in there, these variances wouldn't be as large, correct? With that big of a street going through, if,
Dave, can I ask, are you saying that if there weren't a street there,
In the
units
middle.
could be further south and further north, and so you wouldn't be using 15 and a half feet out of 25?
Yeah, it's
Is that
just a
the
question.
variance
I'm
you're
just-
talking about?
yes.
Brad, do you want to take a crack at that?
So yeah, the 26-foot wide street that we referenced is right there in the middle. If that theoretically were gone, these could be moved south and these could be moved north. An issue would be access for those north units. That would be the big issue. The other thing that's a positive about this center street is we have 14 units with cars as well as visitors, and we're pushing all of that into the actual development as opposed to putting that stress on the parking on the street as well. So could the street be removed and moved to the middle and this front yard setback would be less? It would. Access to the backside would be compromised. It'd be tough. Yep, wouldn't be a good layout, so.
Plus, just going in and out of the houses, you're not watching for cars coming down the street and all that stuff either, so.
That's correct.
Okay. And I just need clarification on one thing, and I probably should have been at your council meeting, but I was gone. Everybody owns their own unit. Is there any way that someone could come in and buy a 4-unit complex and rent it out? Or a
Yes, sir,
6-unit
they
complex
can.
and
There is
rent it
no
out?
restriction on the covenants to allow people to rent out the units.
They can rent them out then?
Yes, sir.
Okay, answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, step up, please.
President Hartog again. One of my main concerns is, my lot line is right here. And what they're proposing is 13.5 feet from here to my lot line. Now, also what they're proposing is that they're going to put patios here and a sidewalk, and I'm guessing a place for water to run, because you have a lot of roofs, you have a lot of sidewalks, you have a lot of patio space, and the only place that water can really run is here and here. I don't know what they're going to do with gutters. Are the gutters going to be underground so that they flow here? You'll have to tell me that. But I'm concerned about water running right along my lot line, and I'm also concerned about all of the patio space, all of the sidewalk space, all of the roof space. That's a whole lot of water, and it all has to go here or here. I don't think it goes any place. Well, this, if the roof slants this way, of course, that'll go into their patio area and then flow down the sidewalk. Can I get any comments on that?
Go ahead, Brad.
That's a great question. I'll let Casey, after I'm done, answer the question on the downspouts and the gutters. That'll be part of the project. But as far as infrastructure, along this north property line, there's going to be a slope down, and then there will be a 30-inch tall retaining wall. So when the roof splits, some runs north, some runs south, it will go past the patio to the north side of the sidewalk to a little grass swale at the base of that retaining wall over to this intake, and the west side will go over to this intake underground to a storm sewer system to the southeast. So there won't be any water that could possibly run on your property. You would have to jump up over 3 feet to get there. So, but good question. It goes not all the way across, it goes about till we get past the units, and then we can manage that grade difference just with the slope once we get past the sidewalk.
I have another question about where are you putting your air conditioner units?
I'll let Casey, if that's okay, hop in and answer the air conditioner unit question as well as the downspouts.
Did you hear the question, Casey?
Yes, the air conditioners on the 2 bedrooms will be out front. The 3 bedrooms or the ranches will be on the sides of the units, which the 3 bedrooms ranches are on the ends, so they will be basically on the east or west side of the units. And then the 2 bedrooms, which are the 2 stories in the middle, will be inside the landscaping outside the front door. So they will face north and south. As far as the gutter system, on basically the front yard side or the front door decks, we will run those underneath the sidewalk with a drain tile and basically have pop-ups out into the yard.
Did you have any other further questions? Okay. Any other comments, questions from the public? Yep.
Mark Reekers. I own, looks like lot 8 on there. Right to the northwest corner of the And I'm under the understanding that the property line's kind of messed up through there a little bit from when we bought it. It kind of goes through 2 feet of our garage on the south side. And it takes out, by the time it hits the street, the pin is a long ways in there into the middle of the driveway, so I'm not sure what your plans are there, but it would take a lot of that out if that's gotta come off. What's gonna happen there? We gotta move the garage.
Does anybody know that answer, Todd?
Looks like Brad.
This is part of the full plans, which Todd doesn't have. Mr. Reeker's garage is shown in the hatch line up towards the top, and it does look like it's right on the property line, but not over. And no, you won't need to remove your garage on our account. So we're going to start the slope at the base of the garage and then build the retaining wall further south.
The driveway in its entirety is gonna be able to stay.
It is. It's correct.
Okay. So I need,
Okay, thanks, Mark. Go ahead.
He just asked if his driveway in its entirety would stay there. Now, are you talking about the entire driveway, or are you talking about the driveway on his property line?
We don't have any intention of removing any driveways.
Any other comments, questions from the public? So what's our next move, Sam?
Open it up for the commission for questions or comments, and a motion if they feel it's appropriate.
Go ahead, Myrna.
I'm not sure who to direct this one to, but when this was designed, were there options that did require as many variances of that footage from front and back setbacks? Aside from what was suggested about not having a street through the middle?
Casey, did you hear the question?
I did not.
So the question is from Myrna Wagner, one of the commissioners, is when this was originally designed, were there options considered that would result in less variances?
Yeah, we looked at trying to put units basically surround just the public streets, but because of everything and the width of our buildings, I cannot put any buildings. I could only do roughly 8 along the south street and then nothing on the east or west street because I don't have enough depth.
That answer your question, Myrna?
So was the goal to get 14 units?
The goal was to get 16 units.
He said that was the original goal.
Yeah, the goal was to have 4 fourplexes, and we were not able to do that. So then the next goal was to go down to the 14 units, which allowed us to answer one of the questions from an earlier comment was I wanted to make sure we had somewhere to pile up snow. So I said we're going to shrink it down. We're going to go down to 14 units to make this work and allow us to stack snow on both sides of the sixplex. 8 units along this, it just does not feasibly work economically.
Any other comments, questions from the commission?
Brad, you said the grade naturally runs to the southeast there, and where were the storm sewer inlets? Can you point that out again, please?
Absolutely. As existing storm sewer is just off the edge of the page down here at the corner of the intersection, and that's where our storm sewer system will run. There will be a storm sewer that runs up to the edge of the street to catch the runoff from the street before it goes onto the public right-of-way. We'll also have a private storm sewer intake on the northeast side in the grass area, and we'll have a storm sewer inlet to the west of the north units in the grass area as well. So this water will run to a depression to the storm sewer intake. This water will run to a depression to the storm sewer intake. The street will run, and all the water that goes to the street to 2 intakes before it hits 7th Avenue. The storm sewer system will run to the corner. A little bit of this water on the sidewalks and the patios in the front portion of the south units will go to the street and down to that intake as well.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
He just mentioned that there was a depression on each side, and as best I could tell from the small diagram I got, is that depression more than 2 feet?
So on the eastern portion of the property, which is this intake, we have a rim elevation of 1428.43. And the sidewalk elevation out here is approximately 1432. So there will be a slope down from the sidewalk and a slope down from the north property line to that intake.
So approximately 3.5 feet. So in the springtime, when the melt happens, are they going to be trucking out the snow? Because 3.5 feet, that's not a whole lot of depression.
Yeah, so the natural overflow for the drainage, if that is plugged with ice or if it fails or whatever could happen 30 years down the road, it naturally will flow down to the south till it gets to the corner.
Okay.
And then this is about 2.5 feet. That has a rim elevation of 1429.3. The sidewalk again is somewhere in the neighborhood of 1432 or so. So that one's about 3 feet of a depression.
Okay. Second question would be about sump pumps. Are your buildings each going to have sump pumps in their basements?
I believe they will. I'll let Casey answer the details on that since
Okay.
he's the
Yes,
builder.
each one of the units will have a sump pump.
And will those be directed to the sewers also?
Yes, sir.
Storm, not sanitary.
Any other questions from the commission? Go ahead. Step to the mic, please.
I think that just to keep the thing looking nice, our driveway really runs weird. We got that youth center, and it kind of notches into the driveway, into the concrete. So when you remove that, you're gonna have your nice looking buildings, your nice landscaping, fencing, and then up against my property, you're gonna have an ugly piece of 100-year-old cement. So if somebody could go out and look at that before we change our mind halfway through, I'd appreciate it. Just see once if we have options, what we can do there. So if everything is as tight as what it looks, I think it's gonna interfere with your landscaping part of it. Yes, that would be.
Thank you. So we're looking for a motion, correct, Sam?
Yeah, the item in front of you is a motion to recommend approval for the subdivision for redevelopment of the site. And then this item would then go to the city council and ultimately be set for hearing on the preliminary and final plat. So the motion necessary to move this forward would be to recommend approval of the preliminary and final plat. Is that correct, Steve?
It is, I don't know.
You want to step to the mic, Steve, please?
So, that is correct procedurally. The only quick point I wanted to make was in my report I submitted to the city too. There are 4 variances dealing with the platting process, the subdivision plat itself. So, we're not talking about, because I don't want to get it confusing with the Board of Adjustment meeting tomorrow. The Board of Adjustment is meeting to talk about variances with yard setbacks. But within the city's subdivision regulations, there are certain design standards that are applied to subdivisions. And this proposed subdivision does not meet some of those design standards. So, as I outlined, there's a couple of lots. One of them, for example, in the city subdivision regulations says every lot should front a public street. So we have lots 2, 3, 4, and 5 do not front a public street. So you collectively, as the Planning and Zoning Commission, would need to vote on granting the variance to allow access to a private street. And so that's one of them. There's 4 specific variances. So I can go through all 4 if you want me to.
Why don't you do that real quick?
Okay, so the first one talks about minimum lot dimensions and sizes. So as stated in the subdivision regulations, there's a minimum lot size requirement, square footage. So 12 of the 14 lots do not comply. So I believe only lot 7 and lot 14 comply with the minimum square footage requirements. The rest will need a variance for that to be platted this way. I'm sorry, lots? No, 1 and 6 comply. 7 and 14 still do not. I thought there was. Oh, you're right. Yeah, there's just 1 and 6. The 2 largest lots comply. Number 2 we already talked about. That's fronting a public street. So that's on the north 6-plex. The 4 interior lots, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Technically have no access to a public street. And then point 3 is there's a requirement within the city subdivision regulations that says each lot shall be provided with no less than 70 feet of frontage to a street. So several of the lots are 25 feet wide, 30 feet wide. The lots do not meet the 70 feet of frontage to a street. And then lastly, it says corner lots shall not be less than 20 feet greater in width than the minimum required interior lot width. And that's required by the city's ordinance. According to the proposed subdivision, corner lots 7 and 14, which again are the 2 south ones, are not 20 feet wider than the required minimum lot width for an interior lot. So my only comment again is, this is due to the nature of the subdivision itself being a 0 lot line subdivision. So Brad spoke to that a little bit earlier. My only comment to that would be is really the city's subdivision regulations, the way they're written, is kind of for a proposed traditional lot and block development where you have a standard lot, a block, surrounded by 4 streets, and it's divided up into lots for individual single-family homes. That's really how the city subdivision is kind of written for. This development is what's called a 0 lot line development. we're seeing a lot more of these types of developments happen. They're becoming more and more frequently, and there's several cities that have actually gone to the extent of writing zero lot line regulations within their zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations. So that's for another conversation down the road for Sheldon, and that might be a conversation, discussion with you as the Planning and Zoning Commission. But for now, in reviewing the subdivision, I have to review it in accordance with what the city has for its current regulations.
So, are you familiar with Heritage Estates here in town?
With what?
Heritage Estates, I mean, they have 2 private roads on the east and west side.
Mm-hmm.
How does that compare to this? I mean, they have no street access to any of those either.
Yeah, I can't directly comment on that because I don't know how long ago that subdivision was platted or when it was redone or the process that it went through. But
Todd, would you know?
Well, I believe those units installed in the 90s without looking it up. Is that correct?
Correct.
I mean, our current ordinance was written in 2010. I didn't work here at the time, but I could be wrong, but I think those are set up as a horizontal, like I talked about earlier.
like a condominium development?
Like a condominium development.
It is condominium.
Yeah, and I believe, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that.
So that's a whole different ballgame altogether. If the property is all one lot as a horizontal property regime, as a condominium development, we don't have any of these issues either. This is coming up because, as Brad explained, each lot is being sold with the unit. And when you have the building units side by side, you need to have that zero lot line for development.
So is this Sheldon's first and only 0 lot line development?
I couldn't answer that question right now, I guess.
I believe the answer is yes, Judy.
Okay,
That is not a condominium.
right.
Right.
Thank you, Steve.
Yep, thank you.
I didn't know we were going to get into variances. I thought that was tomorrow, but it sounds like you're going to take a vote on whether to go forward. So, in reference to variances, I am definitely against having 6 units backed up right to my backyard. They are going to be, if you take the building itself being 13 feet away, and then you add on an air conditioner, I think you said an air conditioner back there, is that correct?
Casey mentioned that would be back there, yes.
So now you've got, just in my backyard, you've got 3 to 4 air conditioners that are going to be within just a few feet of my property line. Doesn't matter in the wintertime, but in the summertime, and we've had a pretty warm summer, if you got 3 to 4 going there and 2 more over in Mr. Reeker's yard, or 3, I don't think we need to have a variance of 13.5 feet. I think we need to push those back that way, or decide on having private homes all the way around the block, which would be a much better decision than what we have going on here. And I know I've heard that the city council is all in favor of it, but I think it's a bad idea.
So how close is your house to the lot line?
The house itself,
Yes,
it's quite a distance from the lot line.
approximate number of feet? 25, 30, 40, 50?
Maybe 50, yes. But we'd like to enjoy our backyard too. That's why we live there.
Just a point of clarification tonight. None of the variances we're talking about tonight have anything to do with the building location or the building placement. So that's for tomorrow's discussion. That's what the Board of Adjustment is going to hear, is the front yard setback, the rear yard setback, the side yard setbacks. All of the yard encroachments is through the Board of Adjustment. The only thing we're talking about with you collectively is those specific points I talked about regarding how the subdivision is platted. So we're talking about placement of lots, size of lots, square footage of lots. Those are the points that we're talking about for a variance. Does that make sense? Okay. Thank you.
The board understand that statement there? So we are just looking to receive a motion to the plat.
To approve the preliminary and final plat as submitted.
So move.
I'll second.
Any other further discussion from the board?
Yeah, Mark, this is Chris. Can I ask one question? I thought earlier I heard that the final plat Todd had not reviewed. Is that true?
No, that is not true. Brad was speaking of the entirety of their plans. I reviewed all of the plats and the utility information.
Thank you.
Here is the final plat, by the way.
Any further comments, questions? We'll take roll.
Knuckles,
Yes.
Vandenhull,
Yep.
Brine,
Yes.
Francis. Yes. Potabom,
Yes.
Klein Wiltshire,
Yes.
Winkle,
Yes.
Field,
Yes.
Wagner.
No.
Motion carries. Do you have any further else here, Sam?
I do not.
At this time, we're looking for a motion to adjourn. Nobody wants to go home?
I move we adjourn.
Roll.
Just say all in favor.
All in favor?